Welcome, family, to our lesson of today. You might be aware or not that in this particular week, we're going to be bridging over into two new books. And as you are aware, before we read any book in the Bible, we're first going to consult our, Bible study guides just to see and have an overview of what to expect in that particular book. Who wrote it, the time when it was written, the purpose of the book. And the two books that we're really going to be introduced to in this particular week is the book of Leviticus and also the book of Numbers. So it's quite interesting because we're really making a lot of progress. We've already read the book of Genesis, currently in the book of Exodus. And, from the coming weeks, we're going to then bridge over into the book of Leviticus and then also into the book of Numbers. So fun times are ahead of us as we really complete the first five books of the Torah. We are really, really on our way just to conclude in the first 5 weeks. So well done. Congratulations to you. If you head over to your Bible study guide and as you read and also just as you go through the reflective questions and everything, it's really going to give you a holistic understanding of what to expect. And it's also going to help you get a lot of revelation from the actual book. And you'll see that the book of Leviticus, the authorship is known to be Moses. So yet again, it is Mosaic authorship, just like the book of Genesis and also the book of Exodus. It was written around the same times that the first two books were written, right? It was during the time when the Israelites were actually at Mount Sinai. So not much of a difference between the conditions in which the book of Genesis and Exodus were written. So all three were written by Moses, and all three were written really around the same time frame. And you also see that the background here is that, at this particular point in time, God is really introducing a lot of order, rules, guidelines for how worship is to take place, for how priestly leadership is to take place, right? So you'll see that God really begins to give Israel a manual for worship and a manual to know how to live in a holy way. And this is just after the Israelites have entered into covenant with God. So it's really like the beginning of their relationship with God. And he's really given them sort of the outline for what to expect and also what is done and what is not done. So before, there were really no laws that they used to follow during the times of Abraham. There weren't any specific laws or worship systems. So this is when God really introduces a lot of laws. So you'll see as you're reading, a lot of laws are going to be introduced, right? And also a lot of systems of worship, the different kinds of offerings that are given and what they mean, right? So we see the sacrificial procedures when an animal is sacrificed. What is the procedure to take place? And also, what's the meaning of that sacrifice? We see that the priesthood is established. So a specific group of people are now said to have been taken from these Israelites to exclusively serve God. We see that there are regulations for how to keep pure and holy. A calendar is introduced for feasts, different types of feasts and special days. And we also see that there's like a lot of order in the community. So God reshuffles the community. He gives them an opportunity just to, establish themselves physically, space-wise, and many other things, number-wise. He leads them to really begin just to establish systems that will help them be more and more of a nation. And he also gives them a lot of laws regarding moral and civil and ritualistic conduct. Um, that's really like the essence of the book of Leviticus. It's really a book of how to worship God. It's a book of the laws that God has placed that will sort of guide the relationship between the Israelites and God. And it's the first time when laws are being given, so it's a really, really important time because later in the years when God judges Israel, it's going to be based on these very laws that he gave them in the book of Leviticus. Okay, and because, the bridging over into the next book, the book of Numbers, is so close to the book of Leviticus, I just thought I'll just create one video for both because everything is quite similar. It's just a very seamless continuation of everything. So the authorship of the book of Numbers is also Moses, written around the same time period when the other books were written. But something particular about the book of Numbers is that it was written exclusively in the wilderness. So this was written during Israel's 40-year period in the wilderness. And if you've been watching the videos, you will know that the journey from Egypt to the promised land was supposed to take them 3 days. But because of complaining and all of these other things, the journey takes them 40 years instead. And during this 40 years is the time when Moses actually writes the book of Numbers. So around the same time frame when he was writing the other books, right? So the background of this book, right? The Hebrew name of the book, if you have a look at our guide, the book's Hebrew name is Bemidbar. Bemidbar. And Bamidbar basically means in the wilderness, right? And it's describing the journey of the Israelites as they moved from Mount Sinai to a new location to now Moab, right? So yeah, so it's quite interesting here. So one of the key themes of this book is the fact that the promised land is sort of just looming, right? They're in the process where they know that God is taking them to a promised land, but so much happens that it kind of interrupts those plans that God has. And as they are preparing to go into the promised land, many things take place, which ends up elongating their stay. And Moses captures all of this in the book. And because of their unbelief, right, at a specific place called Kadesh Barnea, a specific generation of the Israelites is judged. So something quite significant happens with the first generation that is so rebellious. They are so rebellious to the leadership of Moses, to God, that God ends up saying, you know what? I'm actually going to judge this whole nation. And a really severe judgment comes upon the Israelites. It's one of the first really big judgments that we see. It's quite heartbreaking, if you ask me. And you're going to read about that. Basically, God judges this group of people and says, because of what you have done, you will not see the promised land. Because of what you have done, you will not get to actually live in that place. And sadly, Moses is also one of the people who is, later judged as well under different conditions, though. And he's also said to will not actually live in the promised land, which is quite sad. But God does have some mercy on him, and He allows him to see the promised land from far, but not actually enter into it. It's so heartbreaking because He led these people with so much diligence, so much passion, dedication for so many years, and finally they can now see this place, they can touch this place, but he can't enter because of what he did. And you're going to read about what he did and why God proclaimed judgment on him, and also why God proclaimed judgment on the other Israelites that were very rebellious at Kadesh Barnea, and why they actually ended up staying there for long. It was because God wanted to actually wind up that generation. He was saying, look, this generation is too rebellious. I want all of you guys, once all of you guys have passed on, the next generation is the one that's actually going to go into the promised land, not you guys. And we're going to read all about that. And it's really a record of this book, the book of Numbers, is a record of Israel's failures and also the faithfulness of God, in the sense that He still preserves the Israelites and to enter into the promised land, even if it's not the first generation, the second generation gets to go. So it shows God's faithfulness despite the rebellion of the people. God still found a way to keep His covenant, and it also shows us that God has a plan for rebellion. Even if we rebel, He knows how to still preserve the integrity of the covenant that we have with Him. That's it, family. I hope you enjoy the next two videos that are uploaded. Please watch them over the weekend. That will really help prepare your mindset for the readings of this coming week. God bless you, and bye.